Hey everybody, Edre here, and finally doing another album review. It's been about a week. My last one was the new Phoebe Bridgers album, an album I quite liked. And I just did my kind of quick group of albums that I didn't really get to cover so far this year, even though I liked quite a few of them. The Humanist album was very good, Run the Jewels was really good, and perhaps that Lady Gaga one was oddly good in my opinion. I really liked that album. But, I am going to be doing the new Pop Smoke album, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon. This is the new posthumous post-death, because that's easier for me to say, album from Pop Smoke, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. Yet another untimely death, but I gotta say, I honestly had not much of an opinion of Pop Smoke too much up until this point. I was familiar with him on the Jack Boys project, did get around to listening to some of his bigger tracks, and, well, I did find much to enjoy. Nothing really stood out to me too much out of the ordinary versus a lot of the other hip-hop, especially more pop, more mainstream hip-hop out there. So I gotta say, I wasn't sure what to expect here. I wasn't sure if it was even gonna really be anything worth reviewing, because there have been a lot of these hip-hop albums that come out where a lot of them have a very similar overall sound, and I don't really get around to reviewing them. But I gotta say, this one starts off strong and continues throughout. It has a really solid vibe throughout it. It has a very good themes throughout most of these tracks, and one of the first things to bring up here is the 50 Cent production. It took me by surprise a little bit. I'm not sure if it should have or if I should have expected that, but I actually quite enjoyed his production on this album. I think it added to the overall vibe of it. Now, he was the executive. I don't think he produced each and every little detail, but he was the overall guy working on this, and I gotta say right off the bat, he did a pretty good job getting the mood down and having the production fit Pop Smoke's style. I'm not sure how much of this was done after he died, or how much of it was already completed, but for the most part, it sounds like a complete project. This is something that I need to bring up, because there have been a lot of artists, especially rappers, who pass away young, and the label and the team ends up finishing their albums that they had already been working on, but they don't do it justice. XXXTentacion's post-death material has not all been the best, and doesn't always do him justice. However, this one does. It starts off with a very good mood-setting intro and goes into For the Night, which has a really solid melody, pretty solid average track here, and it only gets really better from this point on. The song 44 Bulldog has some pretty good rapping. I quite enjoy this song. I kind of like the more low, more aggressive sound to the voice here. I think it is a standout on this album. It's very unique compared to a lot of the other songs on here. However, there is a good amount of variation. It's not like all the songs sound the same, and that's why 44 sounds so different. No, I mean, for example, not long after this track, you get the more emotional mood swings. While I don't think that song has the world's greatest lyrics, even on Pop Smoke's standards, I do think that it has a really good kind of energy to it. I quite enjoy that song quite a bit. There's overall a very dark, sinister vibe on a lot of these songs. Now, I know sinister is a very dark, kind of big word to be using to describe some of these songs, but especially in the early half of this album, I would say that there is a very dark sound to it. That intro, the 44 Bulldog, very much more dark, a kind of an old school hip-hop sound, but with a modern flair, with more modern production and some more up-to-date beats and instrumentals and vocal inflections and everything. But I gotta say, the album's best run kind of comes a bit later for me. Something Special is a much more guitar-driven song, but it's kind of fits into that sort of 2000s era pop from a lot of these kind of hip-hop artists, but it's executed in a way that I think comes off actually very passionate, very well executed, I guess you could say, and it feels modern. It doesn't just feel like a throwback track to win over some of older listeners, but no, it actually feels like a genuinely good track, and perhaps what makes it even better is the transition, or at least the kind of fitting transition into What You Know About Love. that I might like that song a little bit more. It's a kind of a good song, a little bit. It's on the relationship side, but he starts to prove a little more here that he can execute more pop rap pretty well. This was something that I wasn't quite sure about, because I know he has done much more pure hip-hop, pure rap, but he hasn't really done much singing, at least from what I've heard. I know that I'm not, like, the biggest listener of all that is everything hip-hop, but for the most part, I do think that there's a lot of good inflections on here that I quite enjoy. I really do like that song, Diana, another really strong one down this vein, but my personal favorite song on this album is Get It On Me. Not only have I had that song stuck in my head since I first heard it, his singing on that song is actually really, really good. I was not quite sure if I was going to enjoy it. I have heard a lot of rappers start singing much more, but it's very clear that their rapping is much better than their singing. However, I will say Pop Smoke actually does have a pretty decent voice, a pretty good flow, pretty good sense of melody, and I'm not sure too much about ghostwriters on here. I know a lot of these songs have a lot of writers, but for the most part, I do like the lyrics as well on Get It On Me. I kind of like the flow. It's a really solid track. So overall, my overall feeling of this album is there is a lot of that dark vibe to it. But it does get a bit lighter towards this part of it. And eventually, with Tunnel Vision and the final track, it does kind of go back to those more aggressive hip-hop roots. In my opinion, those final two tracks, despite my liking of them, I do find them to be a bit more typical of the kind of hip-hop music you'll see in the mainstream today. But a lot of the other songs on here really do make up for it. There isn't really any songs that I would say are necessarily horrible that I don't like. However, I wasn't too big on the Sway Lee feature on this album. I thought that he really didn't add much to it. It's very much what you expect from Sway Lee. And that's not always the best, because Sway Lee has the capability of delivering strongly when he wants to, but when he's just kind of doing his thing, going through the motions on a lot, and this happens a lot, he's kind of the weakest link. But yeah, for the most part, really solid album, good solid production from 50 Cent, and I do really like some of these tracks. Just Get It On Me, Something Special, What You Know About Love, 44, Bulldog being just a few that I like quite a bit. So, at the end of the day, how will I rank this album? Because, honestly, a lot of the kind of mainstream hip-hop albums I have come across so far this year have been really hit or miss. There have been certain ones that I like a lot. There have been others that I just have a hard time getting as into. But I did find quite a bit to enjoy here. It wasn't the greatest album I've heard this year, or even really in hip-hop this year, but it was a solid, good posthumous album that I think did Pop Smoke justice, which is something I'm glad of. I hate when they kind of mess up these albums after an artist dies, and I do think that this is a good continuation of his legacy, especially considering he was very young and barely even got off his feet. But I settle on giving this album, man, the exposure, a light 8. Now you could there you go, a little bit better. A light 8. Really positive review, honestly. Anything above a 5 is good, anything below is bad, so at 8 is a really solid review. Quite enjoyed this album. I definitely recommend everybody check it out. I really wish Pop Smoke had more to give, but unfortunately he has passed on. Because, yeah, it's a mess, but this happens too much to these artists lately. But that's about it for now. Thank you guys all for watching. Goodbye.